What's up guys, Justin here with the CGEssentials.com. So in today's video, we're going to check out an add-on for Blender that allows you to quickly create cross sections of your models. Let's go ahead and just jump into it. So most of you know that I have kind of an architectural background, and so anytime I see an add-on that helps with that kind of thing, I definitely want to talk about it and check it out on the channel. So Section Box is a tool that makes it easier to create cross sections of your models. So if you've ever used SketchUp, this is something that's going to work similar to the section plane. It's going to let you take sections of your models. So I will link to it in the notes down below, but basically what it does is it allows you to select a group of objects in your model and then take a section across them. One of the cool things about this, and this is one of the limiting factors of Blender, is this actually gives you a tool where you can export a DXF file out of your model with your cross section as well, which gives you the ability to basically create line work from your Blender models. So let's go ahead and jump into this. I've actually imported a SketchUp model. It's the Contemporary Home by Stephen C. I can link to this in the notes down below if you want to download it and import it and follow along. Mostly just because I really like this model and it's a great one for demoing what we're doing here. So what we've got here is we've got this model that we've imported into Blender and we want to take a section cut of this model. And so when you download and install this add-on, you want to make sure that you've installed and enabled Section Box, right? So you just download the zip file and then use the install function in order to install it in Blender. But basically what this does is if you tap the N key on your keyboard and then go over here to the right-hand side, it's going to pop up this little Section Box window right here. Well, what Section Box is going to do is exactly what it sounds like. You can either add a section box over here, or you can right click on an object and add a section box. Now, usually what I would recommend doing in a situation like this one, because this model comes in with a bunch of different parts and pieces, right? So you don't just want to come in here and select this and then add a section box. It's a lot easier if you just go over into your scene collection right here, right click and add a section box from here. So what that's going to do is that's going to create a box that goes all the way around your model, right? And you can kind of see the way that that box shows up in here. Well, notice how this box has little arrows in here that you can click and drag in order to start taking a cut through your model. So if I click and drag this down, notice what it's doing is it's actually coming in here and it's cutting across my model just like this. And so we may or may not want to use our scene world in here, at least for right now. Kind of depends on what you're trying to do. But if you look at this, notice what this has done is this is cut all the way across the model so I can actually see inside of it. And so you can cut in multiple different directions. So notice how if I drag this over, for example, it's going to cut not only the side, but also the front of my model, just like this. In this case, we want to create a floor plan view, so we're just going to use it this way for right now. Now, there's two ways to cut across your models, and one of the things that I find really helpful is when you go into your general settings right here, notice how there are these two methods, which we'll look at both of them, but you can also use this option for color. And so if you add the option for color, what this is going to do is this is actually going to add color where this is cutting through your model. Okay, and so what that's doing is that's adding this shaded value in here. Well, notice how those don't really show up from a top-down view when we're using the shader method right here. So what I might do in this situation is I might go into the Boolean. And so when I go into the Boolean method, what this is going to do is this is just going to use a different method for cutting across your model. Well, again, what we want to do is we want to set a material. And I've got a ton of different materials in here for different things. I think these all came in with my SketchUp model. But in this case, I'm just going to use blackish material right here. And we probably come in here and edit that and make it darker. There we go. Like this. But notice what that does is that takes that section cut across your model like this, and it also fills in the walls. Okay, and so what I want, because this isn't really, I mean, it's fine, right? But it's not especially compelling. What you want to do is you want to come down here and you want to check the box or click on the button for cross section. So when you do that, what that's going to do is that's actually going to generate line work in here based on wherever that section plane is intersecting with your model. If you've used SketchUp and Layout, you're probably familiar with something kind of like this, but basically this is going to give you lines and edges. Note that if those don't show up when you first click on the section box or cross section box, you can just kind of move this up and down a little bit and it should regenerate your cross section. So notice how you can use this in order to adjust that line work that it's going to generate. And it's going to generate it based on wherever your section cut is. Now, note that you can also set how high above your model your cross section is going to be, just depending on what you're trying to do. You can get it really close or really tight. And you can also get it way up here. But if we go into our top-down view, like this, and we look at this, notice how this is actually kind of generating that line work in here, giving us kind of a better top-down view. And note that this is going to do this both with the Boolean and the shader. They're just going to give you somewhat different results, right? So the shader, for whatever reason, isn't necessarily showing all of these black colors when you go into a straight up and down, but that might be what you want, right? You might want to just kind of toggle this so that it doesn't show any shading at all. And the shader at that point shows better line work, but again, is going to give you that fill as well as the line work right here. Now, one of the cool things about this tool is it solves one of the problems that we have of doing architectural modeling in Blender. And that issue is the ability to export line work, right, or plans. So this actually has an option in here to export this cross section to a DXF file. Now, one thing you're going to want to make sure that you do before you do that is if you go up to Edit, Preferences, there's actually a DXF export. So import, export AutoCAD DXF format. You want to make sure that you've checked that box and enabled this, just so that you can go ahead and you can export that. Otherwise, you're going to get an error message. But once we're done, what we can do is we can do a DXF export. I'm going to go ahead and just call this floor plan. We'll click on DXF. We're going to pick our folder. In this case, we're going to do a DXF right here, and that's going to export that to a DXF file. Okay, so then if I jump over into a program like SketchUp and I do a file, import, and I bring that floor plan view in, it's going to actually import it. Now, one thing you want to make sure of though, is you want to make sure that you bring it in with the right scale. And this is going to be the case no matter which program you bring this in at. Like if I just use the model units and import this, right, it's going to come in like way too small. Right? It doesn't come in at the right size. So in this case, what I've found, at least in SketchUp, is you do a file import with your floor plan, go to your options, and if I set this to meters and import it like this, then it brings the CAD file in properly. And you always want to double check your scale to make sure everything comes in the correct way. Like I know these doors were modeled at 2.5 feet, so I know that these are in at the proper size. But that is one thing you are going to need to be aware of when you're doing this. So you want to make sure that you've imported these with the proper scale in whatever program you're using in order to go from these CAD plans. And so one other thing about this tool is you can also rotate it. So basically it uses the top of this box in order to create your line work, right? So if we look at this, wherever the top of this box is, that's where your lines are going to come from. Well, this box is something that you can just select in Blender. So if I do like an RX, rotate the 90 degrees like this, and you may need to drag the section box a little bit. So we can just drag this item, but notice how when we do that, it's going to update the line work so that it's facing forward. So whatever the top of that box is, so in this case I rotated it this way, is going to be the side that generates the line work. So you can see how you can use this in order to generate the line work for like an elevation view directly out of your Blender model as well. And then if you want to get creative with colors and other things like that, you can only come in here and adjust those things. So this is really good for just creating cross sections of your Blender models using these section boxes, using Booleans, and using shaders. All right, so I'll link to this tool in the notes down below. I like the way that it works. Obviously, the ideal solution would be for Blender to add something that can actually generate this line work and the plans kind of built in, but this is kind of a good workaround right now, as the Blender Foundation doesn't really seem to be focusing in that direction. But leave a comment below to let me know what you thought. As always, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this, and I'll catch you in the next video. Thanks, guys.